onthehorn.com. onthehorn.com.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Dave Moore. You're listening to News Talk Tonight on the Horn, onthehorn.com. We're on Facebook, Twitter. You can follow us just about anywhere. We're brought to you tonight by Gateway Financial Partners, Sandits Travel, Shipper Technologies, Budwitz and Meyer Jack CPAs, Deepwater Seafood of Avon, and CentralCTDental.com. Some fun stuff going on. Aside from, like, international news, like, hey, we have a new pope.
And we do have a new pope. It's very exciting. And, for the first time, it's a Jesuit.
Yeah. And for the first time, he's called Francis.
St. Francis of Assisi, sure.
Well, no, this is the first pope that was taking the name Francis.
Yeah, but I mean, that's what he's a patron saint of animals.
Among other things.
Well, that's what he's known for. I mean, in the world of pope, in the world of saint, patron saint of doggies.
And poor people.
They're all dogs, those poor people. They're all dogs. Come on.
Aside from all that wonderful stuff that's been going on, here in Connecticut, we have been doing some interesting stuff with affordable health care.
Yeah.
Our unemployment has dropped.
Our unemployment has dropped, which means more people are employed.
Yeah, and
all right.
They've actually jiggered the numbers so that it looks like we didn't lose that many jobs in 2012 after all.
Terrific.
It's a wonderful thing.
It's great.
There's new legislation that could make the College of Electors obsolete. It's the National Popular Vote Initiative. And
interesting.
Apparently it is cleared a committee in our state legislature.
What do we think about this?
I kind of am taking the unusual position of siding with the Republicans.
Well, who cares about what side you're? What philosophically, what do you want?
You asked me what I was thinking. I'm thinking.
And there was my first mistake.
You're messing with the Constitution, man.
Yeah, that's true.
Because
much like the census it says, you got to count every person.
Yeah. Well,
and everything we have says that we could get a more accurate understanding of who the heck is in this country by extrapolating this out of algorithms,
big words,
and sampling, than actually doing the expense of some ungodly like $650 million expense of actually going door to door and knocking on the house and saying, "Hi, how many people live here?"
There are still areas where we do that.
That you have to. It's by Constitution.
I know. Yeah. I'm just saying it's
But it's wonderfully
as
inaccurate.
accurate as it has always been.
Which is, it's getting more and more
absurd.
Inaccurate.
Yeah, a little more absurd.
Did you want to talk about the Pope at all, or did I just pull up his Wikipedia page for nothing?
Well,
does he have a Facebook page?
I don't know.
Well, there was another interesting story about this.
With this guy? Probably. He'll have one, probably. Yeah.
This guy in Ohio had bought PopeFrancis.com.
Oh, no way.
And is now giving it to the Vatican for use. Free.
Come on.
Free.
Well, sure. Why not? PopeFrancis.com? No, it's cyber sitting by it's up for auction at GoDaddy.
Really?
Yeah.
Because
maybe it's .org.
Maybe.
Okay.
All I know is that within 2 days of the Pope being elected, there was this guy saying, "Hey, I got this site for you. I'm going to give it to you for free."
Pope just have Francis. To get me into heaven.
.com.
It's PopeFrancis.org.
Okay.
Is the site PopeFrancis.com directs you to GoDaddy auction.
Nice.
That's funny.
Yeah, nothing is sacred. That's all I can say.
Nope.
What'll be interesting as far as this particular Pope is concerned is that he is still socially conservative. Mm-hmm. He is a big opponent of gay marriage.
Mm-hmm.
He is a big opponent of women priests, which was kind of sort of not the direction that most American Catholics, not all, most were hoping we would be going. And
Sure.
it's just not happening. What was also interesting was in this particular conclave, apparently he was voted in on the 5th ballot, which was fairly fast. Apparently Benedict was voted in on the 3rd ballot. Francis was not that far behind him as far as
he finished
speed.
second, right?
Second twice. And then he was first in the next 2 ballots and then took it on the 5th. Nice guy. Really nice guy. Insisted on going in one of the buses with the Cardinals on their way back to a Vatican gathering instead of using the Pope Mobile. Stayed in an apartment in Argentina as opposed to the Archbishop's humongous mansion. Cooked his own meals. This guy is humility personified.
I would have taken the Pope Mobile out for a spin. I got to be honest.
It doesn't look like it's, there ain't a Hemi in it.
No.
Who's the earliest Pope you remember? Because we're all from actually three different half generations.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say John Paul.
John Paul I or John Paul II?
Two.
John Paul II. Do you remember John Paul I? Dave?
I remember Paul VI.
Paul VI. Yeah. Well,
I was alive for John the 23rd, but I have no independent recollection.
John, 63. So when were you born?
I was born in 62.
62. Yeah. Okay. That would make sense. So John the 23rd, then Paul the 6th for, I don't know, it was like 3 months or something, right?
Something short.
It was very short,
well,
maybe 6 months.
Paul the 6th was actually there for a while.
I'm sorry. I was thinking of
John Paul the First.
John Paul the First,
okay.
yeah.
Was 3 months.
Right. And then John Paul. I only remember John Paul II. Born in 1975. So I was around for Paul the Sixth.
Right.
I was around for John Paul I.
Blink, he was gone.
Blink. I was 3 years old. He came and went. And then obviously Benedict and Francis, but yeah.
I couldn't have told you Benedict's name. Honestly, I could not have told you. If you asked me, if you put a gun to my head
Ratzenberger. Is it Ratzenberger?
Ratzinger.
Yeah. Jeez, I used to know that. Yeah.
If you asked me, I wouldn't have been able to tell you his name.
And how about Pope Francis, our current Pope?
Mm-hmm.
Jorge Mario Bergoglio, which I didn't know how to say Bergoglio because there's a silent G apparently. The second G is silent, and my wife Hillary had to tell me that.
Uh-huh.
But Jorge Mario Bergoglio.
Now, he's also the first pope to have been born in the Americas, although his parents were Italian emigres into Argentina.
Okay.
So that kind of sort of placated the Italians. Hey, we sort of got one in there. Hey. But one of the things that I found very amusing was after the election, after he had been introduced, and his last words at the formal introduction was, "Now go home and go to bed, get some sleep."
Not smoke them if you got them.
Several hours later, he left the Vatican. He basically snuck out and went to this small church in Rome. It was a real small church, so he could pray for like about 45 minutes. And I can appreciate his wanting to do that. It's just that no pope for the last probably century and a half had ever snuck out of the Vatican before. So this guy...
Or even may have thought to sneak out of the Vatican. Like,
pretty much.
I'm here.
But
Cardinal, some ice cream, please.
One of the things that he apparently said shortly after the vote was he looked at his still brethren and said, "May God forgive you for what you have done."
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. Now,
first Jesuit, very exciting.
And that means that he actually has been taught to think independently, which is a good thing. He apparently has a fairly strong philosophical background.
And he is a pope with a vow of poverty.
Indeed.
Really?
Which is not...
I did not know that.
Not typical. All Jesuits take a vow of poverty.
That's cool.
Which is very cool.
Which is one of the reasons why, for instance, the pectoral cross that he chose, there were hundreds that he could choose from. 99% of them had all kinds of jewelry.
Bejeweled.
His was a simple brass cross. Not bad. I'm liking what I'm seeing thus far, although I'm still not thrilled with the social conservatism. But I'm thinking maybe...
But he's the Pope. If there's going to be someone that's going to be socially conservative, can we accept that the Pope is going to be socially conservative?
We can accept that he can start off that way. Hopefully he can gain some enlightenment as the years go by.
Well, okay.
Now, the other thing is that some of the Vatican watchers pointed out Francis I may well be yet another bridge choice, if you will. They referred to Benedict as a bridge choice, and the sole basis for that is the age. And they didn't think that Benedict was going to last that long. They didn't know he was going to abdicate. Francis I is 76 years old.
Yeah.
Okay. We're not talking about a person who's going to be around for a really long time. Decades. Maybe a decade. Maybe a little longer. Who knows? I certainly wish him a long and happy life. But the rigors of the job are fairly substantial. I mean...
With one lung.
Yeah, that's true.
Just the travel alone.
The travel alone is brutal. Is going to be fairly significant.
It's kind of like the Navy, join the Navy, see the world. Be the Pope, see the world.
Except in the old days, the saying was join the Marines, see the world, see lots of people, and kill them. In this case...
Yes, but he is, like I said, he is a Jesuit, God's Marines.
In this case, it'll be see the world, meet lots of people, and save them. So, it's a slightly different take on things. Back in Connecticut. We have...
Land of the pious.
Not so much. We have several archdioceses that have been plagued with abuse claims. Hartford, Norwich, Bridgeport, to name three. One of the promising aspects of Francis I, in tying this into Connecticut, is that he is fairly clear that he accepts the fact that the church has not been perfect and that there are problems that need to be dealt with. And it appears as though he is going to be more willing than his predecessors to actually deal with these problems, these issues, face to face. Whereas in times past, there was this desire to sweep under the rug.
Right.
Thinking that it's not necessarily going to be his MO for the next few years. And he is, one of the other things that he was talking about after his ascension was we need to have the church built on rock, on solid foundation, because you know what happens when you don't. It's like a child's sandcastle. It disappears. So reading into that, it appears as though he is going to do a lot to address some of the shortcomings so as to really rebuild the church on a more solid foundation. And if this thought process, this theory follows through, it bodes well for not only the church universal, but the church here in Connecticut. And more power to him if he's able to do it. We are also dealing with some interesting legislation that's coming up. For instance, food labeling. There is a bill in Connecticut that talks about genetically altered or
GMOs?
yes, the genetically modified organisms. There was a ice cream party at the Capitol this last Friday, and it was hosted by a fellow by the name of Jerry Greenfield. We know Jerry by Ben and Jerry because he's the Jerry of Ben and Jerry's. And he wasn't there necessarily to tout his product, although I'm sure that there was plenty of Ben and Jerry's going around there. He was there in support of the legislation that would require genetically altered food to be labeled. It's not you can't have it. It's if you're going to have it, you have to have it labeled. And interestingly enough, the State Department of Agriculture decided it was against the legislation. That just doesn't sit well with me.
Well, it's no longer the Ben and Jerry's of old. I mean, it's now owned by this huge company called Unilever.
True.
So,
I get that, but Ben and Jerry have always been socially progressive.
Always.
Yeah, but also, I mean, their product kills people. I mean, let's call a spade here. Their product kills people. It's a terrible, terrible product.
So do guns.
Yeah,
But,
so so there's lots of legislation against guns. Why not against this guy?
Well, it's not. He's not talking about don't harm my product. What he's talking about is let's label certain products properly so that people have a clear choice when they're buying their food. They're buying it intelligently. So when you go to the freezer, you can say, all right, Ben and Jerry's, the Cardiac Kid. I'm getting that one. I'm loving it.
I know what it is.
It's also going to be properly labeled.
Instant death, Ben and Jerry's.
You'll die happy.
Yeah, you're not going to live forever anyway. Ben and Jerry's.
The reason why the Department of Agriculture, however, is against the labeling bill is that they are afraid that it would put Connecticut farmers at a disadvantage. But they don't cite how many farmers use GMO products. Now, I will grant you that certain corn products could well be a good thing to be genetically modified so that they are not taken out by as many insects, so that you can use herbicides and not necessarily kill the corn plant. But we still don't know a whole lot about what the overall effects of GMOs really are. And the first thing that came to my mind when I saw this story was Little Shop of Horrors. Feed me. You just don't know. And there was a story that was near and dear to my heart that I'd like to touch on at some point tonight. Apparently, Senator Blumenthal is acting to save the air traffic controllers in Connecticut. Now, not all the air traffic controllers in Connecticut are going to lose their jobs.
Why would they be losing their jobs?
Well, the FAA, as a result of the sequester, had to cut 5% of its budget.
Right.
What they determined they would do is to cut the budget that was funding air traffic controllers at privately owned airports.
Mm-hmm.
That would include Brainerd Airport in Hartford, Tweed Airport in New Haven, Sikorsky Airport in Stratford, Danbury Airport, and there was one other. The air traffic controllers are paid for by the federal government. They are federal employees.
Okay.
But
so these smaller places, these non-Bradley International Airport places, lose their ability to do business because of the sequester.
They don't necessarily lose their ability to do business because there are actually flight rules that you can use when you're dealing with a uncontrolled airport. These airports would become uncontrolled airports.
Okay.
what it does is it chops 120 full-time and part-time employees, the air traffic controllers, out. And there was no specific reason why the FAA decided that it was going to do this.
So they have some other thing, like at smaller airports. Yeah, not everyone has an air traffic controller. But what? So what's?
For instance, when you're at Brainerd and there's nobody in the tower, you would essentially have to. It would be akin to being at a four-way intersection that's controlled by stop signs.
Okay.
You basically have to trust the other pilots not to run into your plane.
Good.
And you also have to trust the pilots to be willing to observe who's on first, who's on second, who's on third. And
okay. So this system works in some cases, right?
It does, but it is incredibly slower, and it does run into the possible safety problem of a lot of pilots aren't necessarily going to be up to speed on the fact that suddenly Brainerd doesn't have an air traffic control.
Okay, so but this is because Blumenthal, as a elected representative of Connecticut, was not able to diligently do his job and prevent the sequester from the President of the United States, and these people are going to be out of a job, and Blumenthal wants to somehow make them an exception to the rule.
With due respect, the President and the Congress created the sequester. It wasn't just the President's sequester.
No, that's why I include Blumenthal.
What he has done is introduced legislation that would require the FAA to look at other areas other than just these particular air traffic controllers.
So, but this is legislation down in Washington.
Correct.
Why wouldn't he spend his time instead of introducing legislation that would be a Band-Aid for these people to actually introduce legislation that would help end this nonsense of the sequester?
He's not high up enough on the food chain to be able to have an impact on that. Neither of our senators are senior enough to be able to have that kind of an impact. So he's doing what he can with the amount of seniority or lack thereof that he has.
So he's not a very important person in Washington.
Not as far as the Senate machinations are concerned.
Okay.
Neither Senator Blumenthal nor Senator Murphy are high enough.
Well, Murphy,
in seniority.
He's still trying to figure out where the washroom is, I'm sure. And that's not bad. I like Chris Murphy. I mean, I'm not saying anything bad. He just got there. I mean, he didn't really just get. I mean, he was a
congressman.
So yeah, he probably knows.
Terms.
Yeah, he knows what's up. All right.
Now
that doesn't translate at all when you go from the Senate to, or when you go from the House to the Senate, you don't get to keep any seniority.
Oh no, no, oh no, no. The Senate is one of the most exclusive clubs with their own specific rules, and you darn well better learn how those rules work pretty darn quick, or else you get left with the office by the boiler room.
Nice. I like that office, though. It's always warm in the winter.
A little noisy, but hey.
But hey, it helps you concentrate. It's white noise.
The story that I really wanted to key on, though, tonight was Access Health Connecticut approves increase of exchange deductibles.
Okay, what does that mean?
The folks who are bringing Obamacare to Connecticut, who used to be known as the Health Insurance Exchange Board and are now known as Access Health Connecticut, have just voted to make it a little harder to get health care in Connecticut.
Okay.
Access Health CT, the board of directors of which who are in charge of the virtual marketplace for health insurance when the provisions of Affordable Care Act go into effect, reluctantly voted to increase the insurance deductibles for hospital visits and for prescription drugs at a meeting this last Thursday, claiming that the actuarial tables set up by the federal government call for the increases. The board approved raising the second lowest tier coverage, known as the Silver Plan. That particular plan's deductible for hospitalization is going up from $2,500 to $3,000. And the pharmaceutical deduction went up from about $300 up to about $500, even though the stated goal was to keep it below $400. The end result is that a lot of folks who already can't afford health insurance won't be able to afford it even more.
Okay. And why can't they afford it?
Well, you've got some folks who are already getting knocked off of the Husky plan thanks to the governor's projected budget proposal.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Who are in a position where ordinarily, with premiums for families ranging between $500 and $1,200 a month for a family, these premiums would have been for the silver plan somewhere between $200 and $500 a month. Okay, fine. They might be able to afford it based on what they're paying for monthly premiums, but when you add to it the deductibles that they're going to have to shell out for seeing doctors and hospitalization, it becomes a situation where they cannot necessarily afford it.
So what is the solution here? So we have people who cannot afford health care, and how should we just kind of say, hey, you know what, healthcare is an important part of everyone's life, and we should have some kind of welfare system where if you can prove that you are a good person, but just can't financially afford it, we'll give you some kind of minimalist coverage.
That would be the idea of the original universal health care plan that had been proposed by the president.
Okay, and so why aren't we getting that?
Because Congress said no to universal health care.
Okay, and why did they say no?
Because they were claiming that it would cause the deficit to balloon.
Okay, that might be. Is that a consideration we should think about?
I'm not sure. It really depends on whose healthcare plan you're basically buying into.
Was it your car?
It might have been.
That's exciting. We just heard a car alarm. I was going to go look outside, then it stopped.
I was certain it wasn't mine. The keys were there, and they have not moved for the last hour and a half. So.
Well, maybe someone's trying to break in.
Well,
you know?
Let me turn the alarm off for them.
You're rocking the nice watch tonight. Huh?
Oh, yeah. Well,
it's beautiful. Brian Lee, here's a guy who doesn't need to worry about this. He is so well off. You guys don't know this. Brian Lee, he's so rich. He walks around bartending and throwing stuff around wearing a gorgeous Rolex. It is gorgeous. Look, I mean, it's even beat up. It's got like a chip in the crystal. He doesn't care. It breaks. He just goes out and buys another one.
Another crystal.
You know what? I think...
Which is nowhere near as expensive as a whole new watch.
Since Brian is so rich, can't we just have him pay for health care for people in Connecticut?
No.
Why not? I mean, isn't that really what it is? It's, hey, look, there's a lot of poor people, a lot of rich people. Why can't the rich people pay for the poor people?
The main concern of the healthcare advocates, and there are several of them, is that the whole idea behind the Affordable Care Act was to make health insurance affordable for everyone.
So what is affordable? How much do we say, okay, at some point you guys have to start paying something for it. What is affordable? Like, what's the dollar amount that is the goal?
The
$500 from some kind of minimum plan per month for a family of four?
The cutoff has always been 150% of poverty level is when you start having to pay into premiums, deductibles, etc.
So poverty is what right now? 20?
I believe. No, I don't think it's that high. I believe it's 14.5.
Okay, $14,500.
So 150% of that would mean $21,000.
Okay, so $21,000. Hey, you guys have to start ponying up what dollar amount?
What they've been banning about has been premiums going from $200 to $500 a month.
So
$200. The second lowest plan,
$200 to $500 a month.
$200 to $700 a month.
$200 to $700. So $700. That's 14. Wait, it's 700. It would be 7,000 plus another. It's like $8,400.
Mm-hmm.
So $8,400. So of the 21,000, they're going to get knocked down to only making $15,000 a year or $14,000 a year.
The 21,000 level is likelier to be at the $200 a month as opposed to the $700 a month.
Okay, so 2 times 12 is 24, so that's $2,400 a year you have to spend on health care. Now, they also get taxed, but not a lot, because I think the first $15,000, I can't quite remember the tax code, but it's something like first $15,000 really, essentially the tax is zero.
Right.
Now, is that true for the state as well?
Yes.
Okay. So they're going to be taxed at some 15% of, if it's 15, it's like $6,000, right? So let's say $6,000. I'll do the quick math here. I should do this on my phone, which is way easier to do than this.
I don't know. You just did it pretty quick in your head.
Be like $90.
It'd be like $90 what?
Taxes.
Thank you.
15.
Sorry, you pick up your phone and all of a sudden it blows up with text messages. It's like, oh God, I'm trying to work here. What did we say it was? 6,000.
15% on $6,000 income.
Right. Okay. So that's like 90.
Right.
Okay.
Yep. There you go. You're talking about $2,500 for taxes.
So $2,500. So yeah, what did we say it was? It was $2,400. So it's really like $3,300 because $900 for the year, and then you add on the state, whatever the state's going to charge. It's going to be a couple bucks here and there. So something less than $3,500. So now they're at $18,000 of disposable income, and we say, hey, look, you should be able to live not comfortably, but you should be able to sustain yourself at an extraordinarily minimalist level at $17,000 a year. Mm-hmm. Okay, so if your rent is something, if your rent is say something crazy like $300 a month,
where is that?
Well, you go into New Britain or somewhere like that.
Trust me.
No,
rents in New Britain are
how much? How much?
That cheap.
Well, what's the cheapest place you can find? You go into some crazy place. I mean, you could.
I'll say you'll start minimum 800.
Yep.
No matter where you are in the state,
you're pretty much looking at 800 a month.
Wow, 800 a month. Okay, so that's 9,600. That surprises me because we used to live in Simsbury for $850 a month.
How long ago was that?
That was whenever we bought our house, which was like, what, 5 years ago or so?
Mm.
Rent is a lot higher than most people think it is.
Okay. So that's 96. That's almost 10 grand just to live, just to have dwelling. So now you're talking about $7,000 to get you through the rest of the year.
Food and clothing.
Obviously,
car.
Utilities.
Gasoline.
Well, I don't think car is in there. I don't think you can have a car.
I would say at that, no, there's no way. Unless you're buying a beater, and if you're buying a beater, you're going to pay all your money.
Yeah. And so what does that leave? So, clothing, you're going to have to go to, the Goodwills and all that kind of stuff and buy the stuff for $1.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully, you can just make it. But boy, there's not a lot of room there. You're going to have to, listen to the crazy coupon chick and, have CVS pay you to take $200. It is really incredible. She does it again every Friday. She's on Channel 3. Like, she walks into CVS, takes out like $250 of merchandise, and gives them like 52 cents. It's like, how in the heck?
Not bad.
It's good if you can get all that stuff going. But
I don't have that kind of time.
Now here's the other thing: cell phones. I mean, I don't know what you guys spend. And obviously, we're not. None of us in this room are in this situation. But
right.
I don't know what your cell phone. I'll do mine real quick here. what does your cell phone bill cost per year?
I have no idea. I don't pay the bills.
So,
I mean,
1,500.
perspective wise, for those of us that
2,000.
Yeah, mine's $25.44. I'm like
Okay.
$212 a month ish, depending on how many apps I buy and then never use.
That's why you just take the freebies.
Here's three of them right here. Find iPhone. Apparently, I've never opened. Oh no, here's 4.
Well, Find iPhone is free. That comes with your
Live
phone.
Wall Street something or other. Living Globe and Living Earth. Never opened.
I don't even know what those are.
Never opened. I don't know either because I've never opened them. It's fascinating.
My guess is you didn't buy them.
Oh no, I bought
If
them.
you bought them, you'd use them.
Oh no, I do that all the time. You should see the freaking iPad filled with stuff, or like games you buy and like, oh, this game sucks. I just spent $3 on it, but I'm never going to use it. So these people are really, really, really at the like just making it.
Yep.
But what happens then? So that's someone that can do that. Now those are not the poorest among the poor.
No.
That's 150% of poverty.
Yep.
You're at 100% of poverty. What happens then?
You're likely to qualify for Husky
Okay.
and
But
for
even Husky costs something.
yeah, but nowhere near.
All right.
It's
And
a
what if the
sliding
people just
scale.
don't work? What happens?
Well,
What if they have no income? And they do 99 months or 99 weeks or whatever the unemployment is. Like, is there a point in the Democrats' mind where they say, we've done all we can, and
this is as
the
far as the
state
safety
the
net
state
goes.
is no longer going to help you. You have to go, and I'm saying this because on Sunday there was a gentleman who had said he has been looking for a job for 4 years. He is he's a laborer. He does like landscaping and tree work and all that kind of stuff. Of which, how in the last few years, 4 years, he could not find job with the devastation to our state from all these different storms. How he can't find work, I don't know. But he had said, he went through the 2 years or something like that where he got unemployment. And now, he's like eking away at his savings, but he has no income coming in, and it's really bothering him. And da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And I said, well, give me your name, and let me give you my work number. Give me a call on Monday, and I will get you a job working on a golf course. And you will at least have income coming in. Now, these guys make $15-20 an hour. It's not, you're not going to get rich doing that, but that's steady work.
But it's income.
And it's actually
If you do 2,000 hours a year, 2 times 2 is 4. That's $40,000 of income. Great. Anyone that needs a job, I can find that job for you. I can find a $40,000 job for almost anyone.
$15 an hour is almost twice minimum
That's
wage.
double minimum wage, yeah.
Okay. So, Monday came. Did this guy call?
No.
He didn't. He's been living off of the state for over 2 years. Is getting a little bit more assistance, but basically it's run out. He's in he works in a field that obviously has been like booming for people. I mean, just there are tree companies all over the place now, and there's not enough of them. We're still trucking in companies from other states.
Right.
Yeah. Well, what is it? Asplund?
Asplund. Yeah.
Asplund.
Yeah.
I see those trucks all the time.
Mhm.
So, I mean, clearly, there's money to be made here.
There's also other things you can do. You don't have to, if you really want a job, it may not be what you've always done or what you think you're qualified to do, but there's work out there.
So now that's anecdotal, and that's just one guy, and I'm sure that there's, that's not going to work for everyone. And at the end of the day, could I live on $40,000? No. I mean, I've bumped up my lifestyle and all that kind of stuff. I couldn't.
Well, you also have a wife and kid. I mean, in this day and age, $40,000 a year is not enough to support a family of three.
It's not. It's not. You can do it, but you can't live. You can't live richly.
Your kid's not going to be happy. I can tell you that.
Well, it certainly does get easier while making more money. But you get out there and you try to do anything.
You have to start somewhere.
Yeah.
And you're not going to start in the middle. You're not going to start at the top.
No.
Now, one of the interesting things that was recent news, Connecticut's unemployment rate dipped to 8.1% from 8.2% from the period of December to January.
So more and more people are able to find jobs in Connecticut.
The Department of Labor researcher says that the drop is indicative of the state regaining the jobs lost during the Great Recession.
Terrific. Does that mean now, let's play the scenario out. Let's say Malloy and the General Assembly in Connecticut continue to do a good job, whatever that means, and the unemployment numbers get better and better, meaning more and more people are employed, so the unemployment numbers go down. Does that mean then that the state can not spend as much on helping the poor? Or does that just mean, well, now we have a little excess money coming in, and we're going to try to help even more people?
What it would mean, for instance, is you would have less people who would need to apply, for instance, for Husky.
Mm-hmm.
That's been one of the biggest drivers of our current deficit and our future deficit, because they did not properly calculate how many people would actually sign up for healthcare plans that the state has been running, and it has driven our state spending out the yin-yang.
Can I ask a question now?
Mm-hmm.
That was only from December to January.
Correct.
So that is nothing more than a 0.1% increase or decrease because of seasonal work. That's Christmas.
This was seasonally adjusted.
That's all that is. That's people who got hired to do jobs for the Christmas season, most of that probably in retail.
That percentage was actually seasonally adjusted, which means that they did take into account the part-time jobs.
I would like to see the January to February numbers.
One of the things that Andy Condon, who is the researcher at the Labor Department, indicated is while the job recovery rate remains slow and it's not enough to drive down the unemployment rate to a more acceptable level. It is in tune with the national trends.
National average, okay.
And Connecticut has now recovered 52,600 jobs, or 43.4% of the seasonally adjusted 121,200 non-farm jobs that were lost between March of 2008 and February of 2010. That's the time period of the Great Recession. So another interesting thing that I heard this morning was that housing starts have gone through the roof in the last 2 months.
Through the roof.
And
that's a play on
housing
words.
Permits have also gone up, which is not only indicative of the housing markets recovering, but it's also an indicator that the public's perception of the economy is not as bad as it once was, because more people are willing to buy new houses. And more people
are also coming out to restaurants and bars. I can guarantee you that. So
yeah, but we didn't really have a big recession in Connecticut, I think, like the rest of the country, because at any time during the Great Recession, impossible to find a parking spot at the mall. You know,
there may be that. However, I would say that our tip of the recession was tempered a great deal by the fact that we had already had some fairly significant economic adjustments, both in the housing market as well as in the equity market. So we were impacted, but nowhere near as badly as the folks in Florida, the folks in California, who were suddenly looking at almost 100% losses. And they had it all at once, whereas ours had been a gradual decline. Our big bump was in the late 1980s. That's when we had the biggest real estate adjustment, and that had a ripple effect throughout the balance of the economy. You had houses that were losing 30 to 40% of their value. Wow. They gradually came back through the 90s and the early 2000s, and then 2001, whoop, back down again. But the impact on the Connecticut numbers was nowhere near as devastating as it was in other states like Oklahoma, like Nebraska, talking about the Corn Belt here, Florida and California took big hits. You had houses that were sold at one point for $5.6 million that were barely clearing $1 million, this year. That's how bad the market has been down in Florida.
Someone's got to be listening to this and be like, oh yeah, those poor guys. Yeah, those poor guys that spent $5 million on a house.
Only got $1 million
and
back.
They only got $1 million back. Like it's.
But you had further on down the line a massive amount of foreclosures, which was one of the main things that was driving the fair market value of houses down. And a house that would normally cost $150,000 to $250,000 selling for about $70,000 right now. It's that bad, and they're not going to be recovering anytime soon. And of course, it didn't help that hurricanes, floods, sinkholes,
sinkhole
has an impact on the relative value of real estate, or earthquakes in California, and or wildfires. North Carolina having a raging wildfire right now. It's the earliest that they've ever had a wildfire in the year, burning over 100 acres.
Where is that?
The North Carolina.
Okay.
It's in the hill country.
Okay.
And the main reason for the fire was someone basically set their house on fire by accident.
Set their $1 million house on fire?
And there were significant winds, 30-mile-an-hour winds, that just spread the stuff, the ashes and the sparks, and next thing you know, they've been dealing with a fairly significant drought. And it's showing now. That's not going to help their real estate prices anytime soon. But the point that I was making before we got off track was that we are starting to see the housing market nationwide, but also the housing market in Connecticut starting to come back. And that is a clearer sign of the economy actually coming into a full recovery phase. The interesting thing is, and I have to take our national leadership to task on this, the sequestration doom and gloom that we were hearing about in late December into January, basically the sky was falling if we allowed sequestration to go through. That's not really happening. Now,
not according to the market.
Not according to the market, and not according to other economic trends. Yeah. And I got to say, I'm getting real sick and tired of both sides playing chicken. And if you don't do what we want you to do, it's going to be financial Armageddon. We're getting that from the Republicans if we don't cut the deficit. We're getting that from the Democrats if we don't cut the sequestration. It's ridiculous. And it's about time that people started compromising.
Yeah. There doesn't seem to be a lot of compromise from my perspective from the White House. Here's why I say it. Very significant tax increase on income.
Yep.
To the point where people who have been paying their bills, who have been sucking it up for the last several years. They get a standard of living raise at 2.5%, 3.5%, and what happens? It all gets wiped away. All of it gets wiped away by a tax increase. That's not fair. Just when you think there's a light at the end of the tunnel, no. The people who do not deserve to have more of our money to spend, because they haven't done a very good job with it so far, they need more. And this is where I get into the whole diatribe of elected officials or drug addicts.
Yeah.
But I won't get into that. So I'm trying to keep my blood pressure down.
I have to say that that both sides have a lot of blood on their hands as far as this is concerned. The Republicans' insistence that the cuts that we have to make in order to balance the budget have to come from Medicaid, Medicare, and Social Security. The Democrats insisting that the only way that we would be able to really balance the budget is to tax the crap out of people. I have a problem with that too. There has to be some form of a happy medium. And the deficit numbers that have been proposed by both parties are still unrealistic. If we were to really have a neutral party grade or do a significant analysis of the numbers, both sides come up wanting. And I also have a problem with the Republicans saying, okay, yeah, we should close tax loopholes. Mortgage deduction, bye-bye. No! I'm sorry. There are other loopholes that we can close up that will have a nice impact as far as revenue that aren't going to be insulting the general population. For instance, we could be doing more with not giving away as much money as we have to the petroleum industry. They're still dealing with wonderful, marvelous, what's the opposite of a deficit? A surplus. They have surplus income in the hundreds of millions. But we're still giving them federal money. There's something wrong with that. And I'm not saying that we need to kill the golden goose, but I am saying that as far as profits are concerned, there can be too much profit.
Not if you're the business.
What?
There can
Not if
be.
you're the business.
How do you figure too much profit? What the heck does that mean?
That means, for instance, ExxonMobil declaring for the fourth quarter a $241 million profit for the quarter. Okay, they're getting federal subsidies that are about $50 million for that quarter. I got a little problem with that.
Why?
Why? Because
they're doing something good. I mean, my God, we should put these people in charge of Congress. Congress gets way more money.
They already are,
and they
thanks to Citizens United.
Like right in the toilet.
No, ExxonMobil could be making $150 million profit and not be getting any government subsidies. Let's see. There's a farm organization called Monsanto. Monsanto is making insane profits. They own a significant percentage of the farmland throughout the United States. When the Department of Agriculture for our state is talking about how they're not sure how farmers are going to be impacted by labeling GMOs, they're not talking about the farmer that has 100 head of dairy cattle and about 30 acres of corn. They're talking about Monsanto. And I have a problem with the larger corporations who are making lots and lots of money not taking government subsidies. Why does Monsanto come to mind? Because there are huge farm subsidies that are given, and they're on the dole. They're not dole, they're on the dole. And they're still declaring millions of dollars in profit. I got a small problem with that because their profit is being generated in part by the government subsidies. That doesn't mean that they're doing things right. It means that they're doing things sort of right, and we're giving them an additional several $1 million just so that they can...
It's an attaboy.
Yeah.
Well done.
No. No, I got a problem with that.
So let's see. In January of 2012, Monsanto was about, I don't know, somewhere between $80 and $85 a share. Mm-hmm. And a year later, they're at 90. Doesn't seem like a huge increase. Seems, it's something.
That's a price
between
per share.
5 and 10%.
That's a price per share. That's not their profit margin. Their profit margin is a little different.
Okay. Where should I look at their profit margin? Tell me what actual number I should look at.
What are their declared earnings?
Their earnings are $4.2 per share.
Okay.
So $4.2 per share. Well, that's great. Give me a comparison company that I should use for them.
Well,
how about like Apple? Whoops, I typed in.
Apple's price per share is much higher than that.
Apple stock.
Well, what would be interesting is to look at another agribusiness.
Right.
Okay, give me one.
Archer Daniels.
And let's see here. I want to go. Oh, let's just do this. Oh, you can't do it that way.
We're looking things up on the computer, just for our listening audience. And we
price per share.
Yeah.
Is 20 cents.
20 cents.
20 cents.
Yep.
As opposed to $85.
$85. What are you talking about?
Isn't that what you said?
For Monsanto.
Yeah.
No, earnings per share is 4.2.
Okay. Archer Daniels price per share is 20 cents per share?
Right.
That's what it's selling for right now?
Well, it's selling for $32.
Okay.
But
okay.
but
so
but the
profit,
earnings
are
per share. I mean, whatever the stock price is what the secondary market says.
Gotcha. Right.
But you want to look down and.
So Monsanto is doing better than Archer Daniels relative to their earnings.
Relative to their earnings and how many shares they have outstanding.
Right.
Because they have to divide it by
the number of declared.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So, it doesn't seem like Archer Daniels. What are they doing that's bad, or are they doing everything that's good?
Archer Daniels is one of the larger agribusinesses in the Midwest.
Okay.
They own a lot of corn.
Okay. Great.
Let's just say they're big in the corn futures.
So they earned $69 billion from, this is 2008. Let's see, 2006. 90 billion is what their capitalization is. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So why is that? No. So is that bad compared to Monsanto?
Well, let's just say they're dipping from the same trough. And the need for Monsanto to take subsidies.
Monsanto only makes $13 billion.
But their earnings per share is considerably higher.
Okay, so that means they're a more efficient company. They have a lot less waste. They're spending their money wisely. A little wiser. Or maybe it's just the opposite. Maybe they're maybe Archer Daniels has a lot of speculative ideas out there, and they're spending money on that.
Research and development?
Yeah, a little R&D or something like that.
That would be the genetically modified organisms. Because both Archer Daniels and Monsanto have a vested interest in having corn and wheat crops that aren't going to die because of outside influences like herbicides, pesticides, the weather.
Okay, so this is good. So now I can get both of these on the same time frame. So Monsanto, as we said, let's see. Well, we have price to earnings, price to book, price to sales, price to cash flow, dividend yield. Dividend yield, I always like to look at the strength of a company. 1.3, which company is this? Monsanto. And 2.2 for Archer Daniels. So 2.2% per share is their dividend yield, their payout. Their greedy investors, their fat cats get 2.2, whereas Monsanto fat cats only get 1.3. Now, do you still think that Monsanto has too much profit? Wouldn't their dividend yield for their fat cats be a lot higher?
I don't denigrate the investors so much as I denigrate the executives and the planning, because they rely in large part on government teat.
Okay, so
and they're
total
sucking
executive
the life out of our budget.
All right. Well, then let's look at the insider's track for Monsanto. Their senior executives, total executive compensation, which I don't know how many people that is, but It's whatever the executive core is. 28.9, basically $29 million they spent on those people last year. Archer Daniel, $33.69 million. So Archer Daniels is spending more on the top senior level guys. Key executive compensation, that has risen for Archer Daniels in 5 years from 26.5 to basically 33.5. So what's that? That's 7. It's gone up $7 million, as opposed to these guys, which has gone from 22 to 26, which is only $6 million. So Monsanto has increased executive compensation less, has paid out less than Archer Daniels, and we still think Monsanto is the bad guy? So how do we figure that out?
We think that Monsanto is one of the bad guys.
Okay.
They are the ones that are actually more heavily involved in the genetically modified organisms.
Okay. So the chief executive officer of Monsanto, is this Monsanto or is this the other one? Of Archer Daniels, made $9.4 million a year. That's Patricia. And Hugh Grant made more, made 14.2. So now the second in command made 2.9. And then, oh boy, these numbers get all over the place. So how you dice it up? The 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The top 6 people, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people. That's probably the difference between the two. I mean, they're all making, with the exception of the very top guys, they're all making $3-4 million a year.
A mere drop in the bucket.
Except for this one guy who's number 2 over at Archer Daniels. Ray G. Young, Chief Financial Officer. He is the least paid. He only makes $2.5 million.
And he knows where all the skeletons are buried.
Yeah, right? Well, you would think that not. You would think that he would know they would pay him to keep his mouth shut. Unlike John D. Rice, who made $6.6 million last year.
How much do they pay their human resources person?
Oh, for God's sakes. I'm not sure that's part of public.
Well, sometimes you have a VP of human resources.
Yeah, I don't think they're part of that.
Because that's the person who really knows where the skeletons are buried.
Chief Operating Officer? That would be probably Chief Operating Officer, right? Human Resource falls under operations. He gets paid, is it he? It's Juan Luciano. Gets paid $4.6 million at Archer. And the Chief Technology, Chief Finance, Chief Executive, Secretary, not listed. So they don't have that same position. They don't have the...
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know.
We are rapidly running out of time for tonight.
Anytime you want me to come in and just railroad the show like this, I'm happy to do it, by the way.
I didn't even do any commercials. I know. Our viewers were very upset about that. You've been listening to News Talk Tonight. You can follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. We've been brought to you by Amazon.com, Gateway Financial Partners, Sandus Travel, Sherpa Technologies, Budwitz and Meyerjack CPAs, Deepwater Seafood of Avon, and CentralCTDental.com. I'm Dave Moore. I've been joined by Brian Parker and Brian Lee.
Go buy some fish at Deepwater.
Indeed. We'll be back next week. Thanks for listening.